Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. I know our next speaker is sure to hold everyone's attention. Lieutenant General Dimitri has served as the Joint Staff Director for Intelligence since July of 2022. In this role, Lieutenant General Henry supports the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of Defense, Joint Staff, and Unified Commands, providing crisis intelligence support to military operations, indications, and warning intelligence. Please welcome General Henry.
Yeah, so when the team asked me what I wanted for walk-on music, I told them that I wanted the Darth Vader, whatever you call that. They were kind of taken aback a little bit about it, and I said, no, I'll be able to tell the story of why that music here in a little bit. But for everyone, thanks for once again for DoDIIS and for Doug and the team for having me out. I get to leave the Pentagon. It's a good thing to be able to do it. But the reason why I'm able to do it is because of the Defense Intel Enterprise and my teammates, some of whom are sitting out here right now, and then the combat support agencies that support us. We're a network of subject matter experts, whether they be inside the combat support agencies or whether they be inside the services or at the combatant commands, and then can't forget our partners and allies, many of which are here as well. But I'll get back to the Darth Vader piece, but most of what I'm going to talk about you may be able to refer back to that, to Vader and what Vader represented. And what he represented was really hope, right? The Joint Staff J2 is supposed to represent that hope, right? And it's really weird when you think about the Star Wars series and what he was supposed to do. He's supposed to bring balance to the Force. And I talk to my team about this all the time. My job is to bring balance and harmony to my team, my J2 team, and then into the DIE when it comes to the combatant command, J2s, and those combat support agencies so that, everything can be harmonized and in sync, which enables the combatant commanders to have the best intelligence possible, to make sure that the combat support agencies understand what the requirements are, and then to make sure that the services can help build to, train, man, and equip in order to enable a joint force to perform its function. Again, and to the J2s here, they get the benefit of all of that. So Vader was all of that as well, in case you didn't know. And in the end, it actually starts to bring balance into the force. But as the theme says, there's a lot of chaos as you watch the different elements of Star Wars, lots of chaos. But from all of that chaos came clarity over time. And it is a testament, I think, to the Defense Intel Enterprise and to our to academia, to industry, and to our partners who continue to stick with us, even though we leave them scratching their heads a lot of times because they don't understand what we're trying to do, and because sometimes we don't understand what we're trying to do. But nonetheless, we figure it out, and through all the chaos, we start to bring in a little bit of clarity. What I'm going to talk about today is my role in all of that chaos and how we go about trying to, on a day-to-day basis, not just deal with the current crisis, but ensure that the joint force and the joint combined force is set up for the future against a pacing threat. So I'm going to read a couple of things verbatim, one, because it makes it easier. I don't try to memorize it. But two, because I don't want to miss any of the words. And the 20th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley, said this at one point during his tenure. He said, "The time is now, and the window of strategic opportunity we have is closing. What we do in the next few years is going to set conditions for victory or defeat in the next war. We must adapt now in order to win the next war. And by doing so, we will deter the war from happening in the first place. So that was Chairman Milley, and this was early in his tenure when he came up with that. And I don't think he ever backed away from that point. And that is the things that you're talking about, the things that we have been talked about this morning are all the things that we need to do in order to continue to maintain our advantage, our warfighting advantage over our potential adversaries. And then I was out visiting Indo-PACOM and Admiral Aquilino and his team. And in most visits, I get to have a session with the combatant commander, kind of get their thoughts on what it is that concerns them, but specifically what are their concerns about how the Defense Intel Enterprise is helping support their J2 and therefore his decision-making as a combatant commander. And as Admiral Aquilino is wont to do, he beat me up pretty bad about the things that could be done better. Not things that weren't being done. Things are being done, but they're not being done at scale. They're not being done at pace. And his concern is that at some point we would find ourselves in this competition playing catch-up. And in some areas, I think you may find that we may well be playing catch-up. But in some other areas where we are dominant, we certainly do not want to have that gap narrowed. And we discussed that for several minutes. And then he asked me what I thought. I told him what I thought. And then I told him what we assess as a Joint Staff J2 and the discussions that I have at the time with General Milley and now with General Brown about warfighting and about never losing our competitive edge to fight and win in conflict. You'll hear us talk about deterrence. You'll hear us talk about competition. You'll hear all those words. But in the end, every discussion that I have with the chairman and the Secretary of Defense when it comes to the future is about war fighting and about fighting and winning in a contested environment where every domain is challenged, where every place on the globe is at risk, and we have to be able to fight through that. We have to be able to fight in a disconnected environment. We have to be able to fight in any climb and place, my Marine Corps motto, and so on and so forth. So Admiral Aquilino was, he acknowledged that, said, good, keep the focus. And then he said these words to me, and those words really shook me somewhat to my core. And if you've ever worked with me, that's probably a hard thing to imagine that my core would be shaken. Because, one, I've seen a lot, and two, I think I've heard a lot. So Admiral Aquilino, when I got up to leave, he looked at me and he said, Dimitri, I feel like it's September 10th out here. And everyone else doesn't know September 11th is coming. And that's because of the pacing threat. These are my words now. And that's because of the pacing threat and what he's faced with and what his organization and that combatant command is faced with every single day. For those of you who watch this pacing threat, realize that the scope and scale of what they're doing is only progressing. They continue to take our technology, in some cases improve on it, and others just go ahead and use it because it's tried and true. And that's where a lot of what you're doing, whether it's on the security side or whether it's on the transport side or whether it's on the application side or whether it's on all the other analysis that's being done, that's what was concern of Admiral Aquilino. And it is definitely a concern of my boss, who just took over and sat me down the first week, and we went over the warfighting concept that we have right now, Joint Warfighting Concept 3.0, and what he needed from me in order to help make that concept a reality from an intel perspective. And some of the things that I talked with him about on that day, that evening actually, I'll share with you today. And I think most of it you've heard. I mean, I sat here this morning and I got to hear the speakers. And most of what I'm going to say is just in a condensed form, but they talked about it. They touched on pretty much everything in there. But what was clear to me during my discussion with the chairman is that it's the people right now that give us truly our advantage. It's our innovation, which was talked about. It's our attitude. It's our ability to think. It's our ability to innovate, all of those things. But all the other competitors also have people. But the one thing that they don't have, and this is a truism today, and we need to make it that way in the future, is they don't have the allies and partners that we do. And I know there's a panelist this afternoon that's going to talk to that, but it is truly our advantage, is our people and then the people that come with our allies and partners in that partnership. How we are able to operationalize that is something that I think is needs more examining, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well, because the idea that we wait until crisis to occur in order to make sure that we can share, make sure that we have processes in place, make sure that our people understand how fast, how much of a scope or scale that our partners can deal with at one time. In my mind, it's too late at that point. Certainly now we deal with it, but we're not facing a peer. We're not facing the pacing challenge. We're facing right now, tangentially, we're looking at the Russians in Ukraine. That's not us engaged with the Russians. That's our partners in Ukraine engaged with the Russians. So we can learn, we can adapt, and then we can implement based on that. Same thing in Israel and Hamas there in the Gaza. As that unfolds, we're continuing to learn, but that we won't have that luxury if we're challenged with the facing threat, and our partners and allies don't have time for us to put Band-Aids on and then come to some resolution as that contest heats up. And one thing for the DoDIIS team, thank you for putting me on right after Chow. Usually I'm the one that kind of sends you off to Chow, so I thought that was a challenge. So Doug, where are you? I accept that challenge, but I'm pretty sure some folks are going to sleep through this one. One thing I want to say, though, is, when the panel was up here with the director and with PDD and I, they got to say something, and I want to be able to say something, too. I want to be able to say some of the stuff that they said, right? So one of the things was, if you could do something, what was somebody told to you that you already remember? And I want to, Doug, is it okay? I want to answer that, because I wasn't invited to sit on the panel. It's like, and Omaha's next year? Okay, I wasn't invited to sit on the panel, but I want to answer that question, right? I want to make sure people know that some people actually told me some stuff too, and it stuck with me too. So it's very simple what was told to me. And all jokes aside, I got a lot of things that were told to me. But this one I think is particularly on point for what it is Doug and his team and the rest of the CIOs out there are trying to accomplish. And it's very simple. Never walk past a problem. And I can tell you right now, some of the discussions that we've had today, last year at DoDIIS, the year before, and other times, other venues, other different discussions about IT, we have walked past problems. And right now, if you believe in what the PRC is describing, what they say they want to be able to do, what she wants to be able to do by 2027, time is of the essence. So if we don't solve problems now, then we will be unable to engage in a way that allows us to be competitive in the future. And for competitive for me and everyone in the defense intel enterprise and in the joint force and the combined force is to fight and win. The deterrence part is amusing to me, right? The way to deter someone is to be able to kick their ass and not have to worry about it, right? So they don't ever challenge you. But we're being challenged in ways that are unprecedented when you really think about it. And it's not just economically. We're being challenged in some of the domains that we had ownership of and actually developed and made them into domains for war fighting. So as we go through this, and as I bring the panelists up here in a few minutes, think about that and think about what it is we're trying to do, and more importantly, for those CIOs out there and those folks who are trying to have a resilient network and a way of doing things as far as IT goes, we have got to stop walking past those problems, and we got to solve those problems. We got to prioritize them, figure out how to deal with them. Then we have to fund it, and then we have to actually execute. And we have to continually update and upgrade our methods and way forward. So the strategic environment, almost every person that came up here, even the CIO, talked about the strategic environment from a competitive standpoint, whether it's the PRC as a pacing threat or whether it's the Russians as the acute threat, which they certainly are right now, or whether it's the DPRK who's developing capability to strike the homeland in ways that 20 years ago was not even thought about, to the Iranians and the mischief that they're causing around the Middle East, and to VEOs who right now are trying to take advantage of some of the chaos that is ensuing inside the Levant and other places around the globe. And then you still have everything else you have to deal with: climate change, the rise of technology, AI, all of the things that we've been talking about. The competition for resources, whether it be water or whether it be food or whether it be people. We're in competition right now. All of us who represent these different organizations, agencies, countries are in competition for subject matter experts, or for those folks with the capability to become subject matter experts. And we want to hold on to them, maintain them, and grow them so that they can lead us to a better future. All of that is on top of everything else that's going on. As we think about the future, we're dealing with today, the crisis of the day. And I was told that something happened earlier today. I haven't seen it, because I have an enterprise out there that I work with that is back there at the Pentagon and across the globe taking care of whatever the issue may have been. And so we can do that. But in the future, if it's against a pacing threat, I think it's a whole different story unless we've prepared for it, unless we've moved out in a way that's in sync with our partners and allies, in a way that allows them to bring to bear what capabilities they have and what innovation they have and what thoughts they have in order to have a more coherent force in order to deal with the problems that have cropped up or will crop up around the globe. That's, in a nutshell, the discussion that I had with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff about a couple of days after he took over. Rightfully so, the first staff member that he talked to in that setting was his intel officer, and what it was that intel needed to do in order for us to be set and ready to compete. And if competition should fail and deterrence should fail, that we have to fight and win. And we had a really good discussion about that. And one of the biggest pieces of that discussion was our ability to operate in a contested environment against a near-peer threat that can also challenge us in every domain and specifically deny us in the area of our, right now, I think our greatest capability, and that is our ability to command and control. Without being able to command and control, we're gonna find ourselves in a hurt locker in a way that we've never been before. And there's capability out there now that puts that at risk. And for those of you who are architecting and designing and trying to determine how we're going to have a resilient infrastructure for our IT capability and how it's going to enable warfighting, we have our work cut out for us. And for those of us who wear the uniform, and for those of us who tell the uniform wearers what to do, the policy folks and the other leadership, the civilian leadership, we have got to make sure that Doug and his peers have the guidance, have the resources, and everything that's necessary and the requirements for them to make sure that that disconnected environment that we keep talking about, so what? It's disconnected. It works. We're able to fight through it. And we owe them that certainly as a J2 representing the Joint Staff and the combatant command J2s, we owe them that. We owe them, hey, here are the requirements. Here's the priority of those requirements, and here's what we're trying to do when you do realize this capability in a way that's going to make us much more than just capable. It's going to make us able to fight and win through that contested environment. Our strategic objectives still remain the same. In spite of all of that chaos, in spite of all of those challenges that I just talked about, still remains the same, certainly for the United States. Number one is to protect the homeland. That is one that I think is near and dear to everyone's heart here, and our allies and partners. And when we say that, we're talking about our allies and partners as well. They have to protect their homeland. And that means a lot if you're a CIO fighting through a contested environment, because that's going to start from home port all the way through the line of departure into some combat zone or in some airspace. It's going to start, it's already started, by the way, right here in the United States and in our partners' countries as well. As we continue to see our infrastructure held at risk, and we understand the dangers associated with that. We need to deter strategic attack. I think if you're STRATCOM, and I was with STRATCOM as we were discussing with the chairman some of the issues that STRATCOM has with our indications and warning and our ability, Defense Intel Enterprise, and the rest of the IC for that matter, ability to provide ample warning time. And then I said it a couple of times, I'll continue to say it, if all of that fails, then we have to be able to prevail in conflict. All of that is happening at the same time that we're trying to modernize and advance what we have. Doug talked about that. You saw the film that was played that kind of got at that. But we're supporting a couple of conflicts right now, while at the same time trying to move the joint force and combined force far into the future so that it can fight and win. But it's a very difficult task to do, and without guidance and without having the right processes in place and without having the right people in place and the right training in place, it's very difficult to do. I already talked about, I wrote on here while I was sitting here, hardly able to hear, and I've got to tell this story. I got 7 minutes, but I got to tell this story. So before I came here yesterday, I was going to go into the office. I usually go in the office about 5:15, and then we have a 6 o'clock that Admiral Whitworth started a couple of years ago. But I was going to go do that, and I decided, I have a staff, I have all that. I trust them to do that. So I stayed at home, I vacuumed, I did what you do, and I was waiting on this Uber, and my ear started itching. So I decided to do what you shouldn't do. I stuck a Q-tip in my ear, right? And when I did that, I pushed something deeper into my ear. And I could not hear. The whole time I was sitting here, I couldn't hear anything out of his ear. And so my staff was, frantically laughing at me and also trying to help me. But they got the EMT, or the EMT to, flush this thing out of my ear. It did work, and so I can hear. But while I was laying there talking to her as she was doing this, I was thinking about what is it truly is a role of the Joint Staff J2 in all of this, right? Why am I here at DoDIIS in a room full of folks that are really subject matter experts, very technical, when I'm certainly not? For me, though, it's about guidance, making sure that Doug and the rest of the Dougettes, the CIOs that are out there, making sure that they have the guidance that they need, make sure that they have the prioritization that they need, make sure they have the requirements that they need, and the funding that they need, which was discussed. I was laying there in between, her doing stuff to my ear, and I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. But what is the Joint Staff J2 still doing here besides not sitting on the panel and being part of the fireside chat, and also being after lunch? That's a whole nother story, though. But the other thing that struck me was, no matter where I go, I always talk about people. And I always talk about if we get that right, then even the flaws in what we do from a technological standpoint, whether it's SIP-COP and making sure that that's actually something that we can use globally, or whether it's the backbone, JWICS highway that all of this information runs over and resides, or whether it's at the pointy edge of the spear disconnected. It's going to be the people that are going to have to make us decisive in battle and get us that final yard. So when I bring the panelists up, one of the questions I'll ask them will be something about people that I don't have on here. You guys gave me some questions to think about. I thought about them, and there's one on there that I want to make sure that I talk about, and that's the people. So for people, we all know that we have great people. We say it all the time. We laud them, but we have to make sure that they have the right training, right education. They have the right understanding of where we're trying to go so they can help us get there. I'm convinced that the answer to any of the problems that we have exists in someone's mind, and that someone typically doesn't understand the problem that we have and how and what it is we're trying to solve. I would submit to you that if I wrote down, if I were to go to the J2s and say, hey, write down the problems that you have, the problems would be very similar, but the way you could convey them would be very different. And you could get a different answer for each one of them, even though they're very similar. And if you're the CIO, or if you're trying to solve something that's technical in nature, while at the same time understanding how to enable a war fight, if you don't have the guidance, you don't have the processes, procedures in place that allow you to quickly adapt, quickly shift resources to where it needs to go in order for them to be effective, then we're going to continue to be behind. And we won't have walked past a problem. We will have not recognized that we walked past a problem, which is probably worse than just walking past it. At least when you see a problem, you can walk past it, for those of you who do, and realize that you walked past a problem and you're going to come back and fix it later. You hardly ever go back and fix it, but at least you know when somebody falls in that hole and break their leg, you'll know, oh yeah, I remember that hole. It was there. Still there, apparently. Somebody broke their leg. Somebody else will fix it. I got a couple of more things that I want to talk about that I have to. One, because I'm the Joint Staff J2 and they paid my way here, so I have to say more about the Joint Staff. So the Joint Staff right now does some experimentation that's looking at mission sets and capability as opposed to the other things that we normally experiment on, which is the device. We're looking at how do you do mission threads? How do you actually go out and complete a kill chain? And then all that other stuff, the good stuff, the stuff that technologists can figure out, they go in and say, well, I understand what you want to do, and now I know how to construct the network, construct the tools in order for you to do that. I understand how latency plays into it as opposed to the way I thought it did. So we're doing that now. The guide experiments, if you've heard those, global information dominance experiments, we're conducting those. I think we're up to guide 8 right now, and it's all about missions and mission threads and how you actually get at a problem. And then the folks that do technology, the folks that build networks and architecture are there and part of it, and they get to see what's trying to happen and then tell the community how you're going to enable that with a tool, with a network, with whatever it is you're doing in your lane. And then, as I said before, we're focused on warfighting and Joint Warfighting Concept 3.0 and making that a reality. And to make it a reality, it has to be something that is actually doable, not some pie in the sky thing that some smart person, chin scratcher, figured out on a piece of paper. But now you got to actually turn it into actual real warfighting capability. And so we're doing that along with the rest of the Joint Staff and along with our partners in both the CSAs and in the combined force as well. And industry's there with us as we take a look at these different strings in order to ensure that we don't miss something or leave them out so that they have to play catch up. And then there are opportunities out there, and even though I started my theme music out with Darth Vader and his walk-in music, there are opportunities out there. All is not doom and gloom. There is hope, and that hope resides in our ability to take the requirements that we have, turn them into real capabilities, and then making sure that we're able to fund it and do the things that we need to do so that most of you here that do IT for a living actually can enable us to fight and win in a contested environment that we are surely to be in the next several years if it comes through. So I'll pause there and bring up the panelists and get them seated, and then we'll go on with the panel. So please, can my fellow panelists please come up? And this is the best part for me because I don't get to do anything but just read questions off and bait them into saying something that they didn't mean to say.